Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I am your host, Michael. Along with me again is my regular co-host, Ken. How you doing, Ken?
Good, good. How you doing?
Hang in there, man. Hang in there. For those who are new to the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, the Pound for Pound Boxing Report is a boxing YouTube show, live YouTube show / blog / podcast that discusses all things boxing. Our motto is, when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When boxing is bad, we will talk about it. The bottom line is, if it concerns boxing, we will talk about it. To find out more information about the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, there are two main places you can go. You can go to the official blog page for the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. Link for that is p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. Repeat that, p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. The blog page just recently got nominated for a Black Web Blog Award, 2014 Black Web Blog Award for the category of Best Sports Blog. I will give information in terms of where you can vote. When the date is for voting for the Black Web Blog Awards, I'll give information about that via Twitter and via Facebook, YouTube, and whatnot. So you can go to the blog page where you can find not only past episodes of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report podcast, you can find articles written by yours truly. To find out about more information about the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, you can also go to the podcast page. The link for that is p4pboxingreport.podomac.com, and repeat that, p4pboxingreport.podomac.com, where you can find previous episodes of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report podcast. On the blog page as well as the podcast page, I provide links to where to find us all over the internet, all over social media, on Facebook, on Google+, on YouTube, on Twitter, and the Twitter handle is at P4pBoxingReport. We also have a Tumblr page, we have a Pinterest page, RSS feed, which you subscribe to, as well as a place where you can donate your account, and the link for that is donateyouraccount.com/P4pBoxingReport. And repeat that, donateyouraccount.com/P4pBoxingReport. And what happens is, be a friend, be a pal, be a buddy, donate your Twitter account. Any tweet that comes from the Pound for Pound Boxing Report Twitter page, your Twitter account would automatically have the ability to repeat any tweet that comes from the Pound for Pound Boxing Report Twitter page. With all those matters out the way, let's get started with the show tonight, doing a recap of what happened this past week in boxing. Headlined by a bit of a controversial bout, not a bit of, but headlined by a very controversial bout to many. Arthur Abraham defending his WBO super middleweight title in Germany last Saturday, scored a 12-round win over Paul Smith. And close fight. My issue and a lot of folks' issues with the fight is not the fact that Abraham got the decision. It's the wide margins in the scoring. The scores were 119-109 and 117-110 on two scorecards. If Abraham, I personally had Smith winning after watching the fight twice. I had him winning 7-5. I can see folks who had it in favor of Abraham. If you could have given the fight to Abraham by 1 point, 2 points, even 3 points, I wouldn't have that much of a problem. But what got me scratching my head, got me a little bit ticked here, is the fact that he won by 10 points on one scorecard and by 7 points on two scorecards. It makes no sense to me. It reminded me of the Jesse Vargas Novikov fight a few months back on HBO, which it was a very close fight, but Vargas won it by such a wide margin. You could say Abraham won the fight. I'm fine with that, but the width of the scorecard about how he won by such a wide amount, still it annoys me.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, 117, 111 twice, and 119, 109 does not reflect what happened in the fight. I had to fight a draw. I have no problem with somebody saying Smith won 115, 113. I have no problem with somebody saying Abraham won 115, 113. But I do not see those scores, and it was abundantly clear that Paul Smith, no matter what he did, was not going to win the fight.
Right.
And that's sad, because I think he fought the fight of his life. I mean, he fought the best that he could. I think he boxed very well. You know, he utilized, the ring. He moved, he jabbed, went to the body, he landed some good combinations. He did everything he was supposed to do to win the fight. I mean, to give him a chance to win the fight. But I mean, it just the fact of the matter is he needed a knockout. They weren't going to score every close round that probably went to Smith all went to Abraham.
And let's put some names out here in terms of the judging. The judges were Waleska Roldan of America, of the U.S., Hungarian judge by the name of Zontai Inyadi, excuse me if I'm pronouncing the names wrong, and Fernando Laguna of Spain. I don't want to note him specifically, but because he's the guy who scored the fight in favor of Abraham, 119 to 109. I mean, that's 11 rounds to 1, kid. 11 rounds to 1. Really?
No. Abraham did not win 11 rounds. Okay, the most you could probably give Abraham is 7 rounds, maybe 8, because there was a lot of close rounds. Okay, I saw some people score at 8 rounds to 4 for Smith. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I could see why they would score it like that. It was a very close fight. I mean, there was a lot of close rounds. It was a very hard fight to score. You had Smith's boxing and then, but the eye-telling shots, the eye-catching shots were being thrown by Abraham. He always throws the eye-catching shots, and whenever the eye-catching shots land, the crowd goes nuts. They go, yeah, and the judges hear that stuff, like even if it doesn't land, if it comes close, the crowd goes nuts, and judges are only human. They hear that, but still, it's 11 rounds to 1. What fight was he watching? I mean it. Like, what fight was he watching? Seriously. Listen, Waleska Roldan is an iffy judge to begin with. I know who he is. He judges a lot in New York and New Jersey and Connecticut. He's an iffy judge to begin with. The other two, they never judged in the U.S., but it's clear that these individuals, were favored towards Abraham. I mean, and no matter what Smith did, it wasn't changing their minds. They were giving Abraham the really close rounds, and there was a lot of close rounds. But there was rounds, even the close rounds, where it should have went to Smith. It just doesn't make any sense. To score 119, first of all, 117, 111 is bad, okay? But the 119, 109, I don't get. How could you give him 11 rounds? He didn't dominate. He struggled in the fight, especially in the second half of the fight where he started huffing and puffing Abraham. It was a close fight. There's no way those scores do not reflect the fight. I'm sorry. It was a close fight. Could have went either way. I don't have a problem with Abraham winning. It's just the way, the margin of which he won. And I don't have a problem if Smith won the fight because it was very close.
Well, let's move forward and talk about the future for both guys. I mean, let's face it. Look, Barry Hearn, of Matchroom Sports, the promoter for Smith, he's going to file a petition to protest. Let's face it, it's not going to go anywhere. Abraham, he's looking to fight the winner of Felix Sturm and Stieglitz. That's the fight he's probably going to end up fighting. It's a big fight. It's a big money fight for him. And look, I can understand those who are arguing for Smith should get a rematch. Of course he should. But this is about money here. This is about business. It's not necessarily about fairness in boxing. We all know that. And Smith is going to be he's going to be cut short here. He's going to be left on the short end of the stick. And it's going to be. And the sad thing is, he pretty much fought over his head. I don't think he's going to fight that well again. And slowly but surely, people are going to forget this fight, and people are going to move on. Abraham has already moved on, and we will probably see Abraham next against the winner of Stieglitz and Sturm in Germany in a big money fight there.
Yeah, we are. And let me just be honest with you. Smith deserved a rematch. I think based on the controversy of the fight, he definitely deserved a rematch. Is he going to get it? No.
Nope.
There's no money in Paul Smith. Paul Smith went over to Germany as a mandatory opponent. Mandatory. Very, 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 very important to understand that He was a mandatory. He was a picked guy to get Abraham rounds in, and he was supposed to lose. Okay, that's how the script was supposed to go. But you know, there's a lot of fighters out there that don't follow the script and they don't listen to that, and they go out there and they fight their asses off, and that's when we see upsets. But there's no reason to have a rematch with Smith. You know, Abraham's got, you know, money fights coming up with the winner of Stieglitz or Sturm or any other fight out there. You know, Kessler's back in the gym getting ready for a comeback. He's talked about fighting Kessler. You know, there's fights out there that are worth bigger money than Paul Smith. You know, Paul Smith just happened to have his night. You know, very good night. If you look at his record, he's never performed that high of a level.
Excuse me for interrupting, but you know what this fight reminded me of in many ways? Dave Tiberi versus James Toney. Seriously, it was Tiberi fighting over his mind. I guess, well, in that case, Toney, he was just weight drained and just didn't have it that night. But in terms of the way the fight went, that's what that fight reminded me of.
Yeah, exactly. It was just a night where one guy performed over his head and the other guy didn't perform as expected. Doesn't change the fact Tiberi was robbed grossly and disgustingly, even worse than Smith. This fight wasn't a robbery. This was a very close fight that could have gone either way, but it feels like a robbery because of the wideness of the scorecards. Okay? Tiberi damn near won 9 of the 12 rounds, and he got grossly robbed of a decision he deserved. If anybody wants to go watch that fight, they can. Dave Tiberi and James Toney, it's out on YouTube. And if anybody want to watch the Paul Smith Abraham fight, that's out there on YouTube as well. Go watch it and, you know, judge it for yourselves and understand that, you know, just because a guy performs doesn't mean he's going to get the decision, especially not in Germany. It's just so biased in Germany, you know. But there's a lot of places that are like that. It's just Germany seems to get the most flack.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on. Interesting fight that took place in Montreal, at least an interesting fight on paper, between Tavoris Cloud, former IBF champion, who's kind of been on the slide a bit, fighting a Russian guy by the name of Beterbiev, Artur Beterbiev. Hardcore fans, this guy is even not really known even amongst hardcore fans. Beterbiev is a guy, very good amateur record, beat Kovalev during the amateurs, been based out of Canada, 5-0 coming into this fight with 5 KOs. Well, against Cloud, he destroyed Cloud, knocked him down, I believe, 3 times in the first round, finished him off in the second. I'll go to you on this one, Ken. I don't know what to think of this fight and what to think of Beterbiev. Is he a guy, Beterbiev, 29, late starter into the game? Is he a guy who may be a potential star? Is he a guy to keep your eye on? Or was he a fighter who took advantage of a Tavoris Cloud, who's, like I said, been a bit of a slide over the past few fights? Hasn't really looked good lately. Your assessment of this fight, first of all, and your assessment of Beterbiev.
I think Beterbiev can be a star. I think he's the type of guy that's sort of like, you know, like the recent influx of Eastern European and Russian and Asian fighters that have come into the sport recently, who have decorated amateur backgrounds and are probably, once they actually have their, when they turn pro, they're already pro. Okay, that's how much experience they have on the amateur level. And Beterbiev is very, very experienced. He was an Olympian. Very skilled. He's a fan-friendly fighter. He's not the typical slick, skillful boxer, but he's not the, like I said, he's not the slick type of boxer. He's a guy that comes forward, that has subtle skill, and he can punch. And the thing, and I really didn't have a problem when I'm fighting Cloud, because if you look at his amateur background, it's like he's probably at this point where he should be fighting guys like this. But I'm gonna just be honest with you. I don't think Cloud is physically shot, but I think he's mentally fried.
There you go.
I think he's mentally fried. I think he's never been the same since the Hopkins fight. The Stevenson fight, he looked bad. He just didn't look right in that fight. And Bernard Hopkins has done this to a lot of fighters. Let me tell you, he's ruined a lot of fighters' career because he makes you question everything you've ever learned about the sport with his skill. His skill is like on a different level, even at this point in his career, and he's 50. He's probably more skilled and smarter than most of the guys out there. And
it's not just a skill; it's his
intellect.
It's his
intellect.
Yeah, that's right. Intelligence. That's what makes the difference.
It's the intellect, and he makes any of his opponents question everything they've ever learned. And Cloud's never recovered from that, I don't think. Stevenson fight, he looked very lethargic. He looked lost. He didn't let his hands go. Stevenson took advantage of it, beat him up. This fight, that actually Beterbiev wasn't supposed to be in this fight. This was actually supposed to be Tavoris Cloud versus Jean Pascal. But Jean Pascal pulled out of the fight citing promoter issues. Typical, you know. Something about, you know, training expenses and money he was not paid, so he's not fighting. Which doesn't, you know, which is usual of fighters. Every time they have a disagreement with their promoter, they sit out instead of trying to work through their issues. We'll get more into that when we discuss Goossen. And Beterbiev stepped in, and I didn't have a problem with him stepping in and taking the fight because at this point, Cloud is probably a top 20 guy, top 25. You know, he's not the guy that was champion. I don't even think he even though he made 6 defenses of the IBF title, I never felt like he was truly a world champion because there was outings where or fights where he didn't look that good. There was fights he got beat, especially against Gabriel Campillo, and I never really felt he was truly a champion. I felt he was a bell holder. Let's just put it that way. He was a bell holder, and I didn't mind Beterbiev taking this fight, but the way he just blew through Cloud just shows you what kind of pedigree he has and what kind of skill he has, you know? I mean, yeah, granted, Cloud is mentally fried and probably is done as a professional fighter. It's still impressive because not even Stevenson did that to Cloud. This really showed the quality and the skill that this you know, Beterbiev has, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was fighting for a title in the next year or two. He's really further along than most prospects, and based on his pedigree, I can see him being a world champion and becoming a mainstay in the top of the division if he just continues to, you know, progress. And I have no reason why he wouldn't progress. He's shown if he can handle a guy like Cloud, I think he's definitely in the mix on the world class level.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't put him against a Hopkins right now, or even
no.
Or Donna Stevenson. I wouldn't put him in.
No, absolutely.
It would be a long time before I put him in. Even think about putting him in with a Hopkins or even a Donna Stevenson. At this point, he still needs more seasoning. How would you compare?
He can hold his own with most of the guys in the lower half of the top 10 and top 15.
You said you would wait to put him into a title shot until how long? Because I think he still needs another year.
Yeah, I
18
say
months of seasoning.
I would milk this Cloud win. I would still fight good fighters, but I would try to build this Cloud win.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he took this on short notice. This wasn't like he was supposed to fight this guy. He took this fight on short notice, and he happened to win.
And let's hope we can get him on television here, to see him here on maybe a cable station or maybe an undercard or a Showtime or HBO card moving forward to see more of him. Because look, I'm still having my doubts about him. I need to see him against someone more of a live dog. But based on the way he kind of was all over Cloud, overwhelmed him as well as power. It made you cause for pause, made you take a step back and look and say, man, hey, this guy, he may be something going forward. Let's move on to other fights that happened over the weekend in Russia. I believe this was Roy Jones fighting a guy named Atiyo in Russia, cruiserweight bout. Listen, Roy Jones did what he had to do, knocked this guy out within the first 90 seconds of bout with a body shot. A lot of people will say, oh, he was fighting a guy, a no-hoper. I can understand that. That's fine. But on the other hand, look, this is 5 fights in a row for Roy Jones, following his loss to Lebedev a few years back. Maybe there's a world title shot going forward. Early 2015, I would guess. Your thoughts on this win by Roy Jones? Does this mean anything, or is this just a guy over? Is this just a win over a so ho-hum guy we really shouldn't take serious?
I don't think, like, honestly, I don't, like, personally, I think if Roy Jones is going to fight for a title, I mean, there's one guy I think he should go after, and that's the guy who beat Christoph Waldolczyk this past weekend. That was Gregory Draws, and I think that's probably the most winnable fight. I mean, the most realistic title fight he could probably win. If he's gonna do that, but personally, I mean, that's what I was, talking to with a couple people. I said a lot of people say, oh, he shouldn't fight for a title. He should just keep fighting the level he's at. But he with each fight he wins, he is building confidence in himself. And that he could maybe compete on a higher level. And I think, if he's going to compete on a little bit of a higher level, I'd go after Draws, personally. Because that's probably the only winnable fight out there for him. It's not going to be Huck. It's not going to be Lebedev. We've already seen that. We don't need to see that again. I think Hernandez beats him. And I think there's other guys in the division. But Draws seems like a guy that, is a winnable fight. I mean, yeah, he's got power, but he's very slow. And Roy, for what it's worth, he's not that slow. I mean, he's slower, but I think he's still fast enough to maybe, beat a guy like Draws. Draws is 35, okay, and if he's going to go for a title, that's the fight. I wouldn't personally go for a title. I just keep marketing the sport. I keep fighting the level he's fighting. And he's giving the fans a thrill. It's a great thing what he's doing in Russia and in Eastern Europe, showcasing his skill. And he showed he can still do things, It's just not on a world-class level. Like a true world-class level. He can't do it anymore. But if he's going to go after a belt, that's the guy he should go after. I think any other fight is pointless.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Look, if he's going to go after a world title shot, he says he wants a world title shot, world title shot next. The guy who beat, I can't even pronounce his name. Waldolczyk this weekend. That is the guy. I don't think he beats Huck. Huck will knock him out. We've seen him against Lebedev. Lebedev stopped him in 10. Hernandez, I think he has a halfway decent chance against him, but Hernandez will be the favorite. But Draws, he is the guy if Roy Jones is going to go after the world title shot. Upset that happened Friday, I believe it was, in Panama.
No, Texas.
Texas, you're right. That happened Friday in Mesquite, Texas. You're right. As Juan Carlos Payano got a technical decision over Anselmo Moreno to win his WBA Bantamweight belt. What happened was cut forced the stoppage of the bout. Payano suffered a cut. Scorecards at the after 6 rounds were 59-55, 58-56 on 2 scorecards. But in watching, I hadn't seen the bout, but from what I've been reading, and I'm going to go to you on this if you've seen the bout, Ken. But from what I've read, that Payano was really getting the better of Moreno throughout, and even afterwards in interviews that I read, Moreno, he basically conceded as much, said that Payano was the better man, and after the fight, he's not even going to go for a rematch, that he's going to move up to 122 pounds, that as he claims, he had issues making weight for the bout.
Yes,
did you see the bout? And I'll lean on you towards really a description of what went down.
Yeah, I'm gonna just give it to you this way. Payano essentially won the fight because he was able to rough up Moreno and really get the better of him, making a dirty fight, an inside fight, a really grungy, grimy type of fight. And
much in the same way as Morris did against
Moreno? That he followed the same blueprint. He made it rough. He went to the body. He fouled a little bit, because that's how you unnerve Moreno. You make it a dirty fight. You make it a fight he's not comfortable with, because you know Moreno loves to box on the outside, likes to use his height, use the jab, counter, throw combinations, do little cute things. And Payano wasn't having none of that. He wasn't having none of that. He just went in there and roughed him up, went to the body, just beat him up. Beat him up. There was a head clash in round 2, caused a nasty cut over Payano's eyebrow. But it didn't change the course of the fight. It was just one way. The cut did get worse, and in round 7 they stopped it, the early part of round 7, so they reverted back to round 6. And I agree with the scoring. Payano did it. He won the fight, and I give him credit. He did exactly what he said he was going to do. He was going to go in there, and he was going to make it a dog fight. He said that he was there to win. He was determined. He was hungry. He wanted, to prove to people that he wasn't just some, the opponent to there, and he showed that. And he showed to be, he's going to be a tough guy. He's going to be a tough guy. I don't know how long he stays champion, but he's a tough guy. He can fight a little bit too. He's not a bad fighter at all. He's a little rough, but I mean, he's the type of guy that may have a little bit of a reign here, because he knows how to fight. He knows how to he's aggressive, and he's crowd pleasing. He gives what the people want to see, a good he gives a tear up when he fights. So, and I'm going to say this for Moreno. I looked at Moreno at the weigh-in. You could tell he was really frail. He's struggling to make weight, and he's a tall guy too. And he's getting up there in age. He's not no spring chicken anymore.
Well, he's 29, I believe.
Yeah, but the point is, he's had a lot.
He's 29, but he's been around a long time. He's had a lot of fights.
He's had a lot of fights. I believe he's clocked over 300 rounds in the ring. That's a lot of mileage. And for him to continue to make 118 up to this point is tremendous. I mean, it shows dedication in the gym, the dedication, and to his work ethic and to his craft. But yeah, I agree with him. He should move up. And Moreno showed a lot of humility after the fight. He said he was the better man, the better fighter. He deserved to win. And he said he was going to move up to 122. And I even said that after the fight, I think he was going to move to 122. There's no reason to stay at 118, especially if you're struggling to make weight and you can't keep a guy like Payano off of you. And I'm going to be honest about Payano. Payano's not really a bantamweight either. He's a big guy. He's probably hiding in a weight class. If he'd probably wouldn't look as formidable if he was fighting in his own weight class, because I think he's probably a 122 or 126. But he's fighting at 118, so I'm not gonna. But he is a big bantamweight, so any guy who's struggling to make, of course, he's gonna look really strong and push the guy around. But yeah, it was a good performance for Payano. Moreno, was humble in defeat, and he's still, to me, he's still a top fighter, at least a top 10. I mean, I think he goes to 122 and he makes some noise,
If he can
and
get a
he's,
fight.
huh?
If he can get a fight. I'm worried that folks may look at Moreno as a guy that's high risk, low reward.
He is. That's why, he's that type of fighter, but he has a very good resume. He's made title defenses. He's gone into other guys' backyard and fought them. He's not afraid to fight. He's not afraid to fight. He's not afraid to go into somebody's backyard, like the card this in Texas. That was Mike Tyson promotion. They had Payano, and he went in their backyard and defended it. Even though it was a interim title, he defended the belt. So you got to give him credit. He'll fight anywhere. He's not afraid of guys. So I think he's willing to be on the B side to get a fight. That's not the issue, with him. I think is getting a foothold in the division. That's going to be a little struggle, but I still think he's a top fighter.
And lastly, last fight we're going to recap took place last night at Stockton, California. Fight that aired on ESPN2.
San Diego.
IBF. Let me look it up right quick.
Yeah, it was at the bar hangar in San Diego.
Okay. Well, no. Santa Monica. Santa Monica. Yeah. IBF Eliminator, middleweight, as Hassan Mdam scored a unanimous decision win over Curtis Stevens. He's now basically the mandatory challenger for the winner of the upcoming bout between Sam Solomon and Jermaine Taylor. That's going to be happening next week, I believe. Look, we talked about this bout before we began the show tonight, Ken, and for me, Stevens is basically a one-dimensional fighter. I was frustrated by the lack of a jab, the lack of body work, the lack of activity on his part during the fight. As I thought he would, he boxed some more, using movement, using speed, using jab, using angles on Stevens. And Stevens offered up little resistance as far as I'm concerned, except for the last couple of rounds, last round specifically, in which he hurt Ndam. But this was Ndam all the way. And maybe I shouldn't be mad at Stevens because, as someone told me on Twitter, I was doing some live tweeting about this bout. If you look at Stevens, this is what he is. He talks a lot. He talks about how he's going to do this and do that. But in the biggest fights against the best opposition, he comes up short. And that was the case in this bout. He made this bout, as far as I'm concerned, he made this bout easy for Ndam to win because he did nothing. He did nothing. And I don't know if that's the part of him or if that's the part of bad corner work. I'm suspecting it's the latter, or I'm suspecting it's a little bit both.
Yeah, I think, I'm going to be honest with you, yeah, I was disappointed in Stevens too, because after what he did against, in his last fight, coming back, and knocking the guy out, I really thought, yeah, like this is, I have to get behind him now, and I did get behind him, and I still like him as a fighter. I'll be straight up, I still like him as a fighter, because you know why? Even if he gets outboxed, whenever he fights the guys he can beat, he always delivers a spectacular knockout, and you can't take that away from the guy. But last night he showed like that whenever he steps up, he always loses. He just didn't go to the body. He didn't jab. He just let Ndam take the play from him. Every single time, Ndam was stayed on his feet. He did a lot of moving. A lot of good jabs. A lot of good counter shots. Good, just good, fundamentals and the right way to fight a guy like Stevens. Went to the body. Shot combinations up to the head. I'll tell you, the knockdown was beautiful. The way he set up the knockdown was beautiful. Drew a jab, and then as Stevens came lunging in, he landed a nice counter, right hook, and floored him. It was perfect. And he just fought. Listen, Endom, that was about as perfect of a fight as you could fight against a guy like Stevens. Perfect, damn near perfect. I gave him an A- for a performance. That was just brilliant. He dominated Stevens. He made Stevens look like the guy that he really is.
Yeah, from what I've seen of Endom, that was the best performance of his career by far.
Yeah, absolutely. And people also has to realize Endom had a lot of experience against a little bit higher level of opposition going into this fight. But I never thought, he'd go in there for 12 rounds and completely outbox him the way he did. I thought at some point, that he would engage into a tear-up and start, exchanging with Stevens. And I thought if he did that he probably would have ended up knocked out. But he stayed disciplined. He stayed stuck to the game plan. I tell you, his training camp, for this fight, he was up in the Swiss Alps. He was running. That just shows you where the stamina came from. All that running in the mountains, and he looked in outstanding shape. So did Stevens, but Stevens just seemed to be content on landing one big shot. And he just couldn't land a shot, and he kind of followed Endom into his traps, and he just fought a very good fight. Endom, I would actually, have Endom as the favorite against either Solomon or Taylor, the way he fought. I mean,
yeah, I was thinking the same thing. As long as he doesn't get hit with a big shot,
and doesn't fight the other guy's fight.
He can outbox either guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he can outbox either guy. I think Endom's probably a top 15 guy at middleweight. I don't think he's definitely not a world beater, but against guys on the level he's fighting right now, he should be able to handle them pretty easily if he sticks to a game plan like he did last night.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'll put him at the Macklin level. I think he would beat a Rosado, who's a top 15 guy. Gale, he will give him a very good fight in that kind of level. But anything above that, against the top dogs, the Golovkins, the Cottos, Quillen, who's already beaten him. I'd give him a decent shot against Daniel Jacobs, but the top dogs at 160 pounds, no. But against the guys he was fighting, like Stevens last night, and the proposed fight was Solomon and Jermaine Taylor, yeah, he could win, absolutely.
Yeah, he can definitely win. He's not, he's a former champion, okay, for what it's worth. I mean, yeah, he was a WBA belt holder, but we already know that that's not really a legit world title. But we're not going to really get into that. But he was a champion, and he fought the guys that were put in front of him, and he did give him a good account of himself against Quillen, even though he lost. I'll tell you this. The way I scored that fight, outside of the knockdown rounds, I felt he did really well in the other ones, and I gave him all the rest of the other rounds. It was just the knockdown rounds that cost Endom the fight. If he had not engaged himself in the therapy, it would have probably been a much closer fight. I don't know if he would have won, but it would have been a lot closer fight.
Yeah, so let's move on to the news segment of the show. Sad news came down this week, bit of shocking news really, as boxing promoter Dan Goossen, news broke that he passed away, I believe it was on Monday, at age 64 due to complications with liver cancer. And I say shocked because I didn't know it. I didn't know too many people who I follow in my circles, boxing circles, knew that Goossen was suffering from liver cancer. Goossen, really one of the more prominent promoters, one of the power players of the sport over the last 30 years. First came to prominence in the mid to late 80s. Guy named Michael Nunn to the middleweight title. He also worked with Terry Norris, the Ruelas brothers. Later on, Tony, Paul Williams, Mike Tyson, I believe Hakeem Rahman and others. At the time of his death, he was promoting the likes of Chris Arreola and Andre Ward, who was, let's be truthful here, let's be honest, he was in a battle with, because Ward was trying to break out of his contract with Goossen. They was in court multiple times. But with all that being said, you cannot talk boxing over the last 3 decades without mentioning Dan Goossen. His influence in the sport was large. Was he on the level of an Arum or King? I say no. But what he did, his contributions, still matter. He will be sorely missed, Ken.
Oh, absolutely. Everybody I've talked to had no bad word to say about Dan Goossen. You know, they say he was an upstanding guy. You know, he treated his fighters and the fighters he brought in as opponents well. You know, nobody has a bad thing to say about Dan. Even some of the critics of that are critical of boxing can't even say anything bad about Dan.
And I mentioned Andre Ward. Excuse me for interrupting. Andre Ward did release a statement upon the death of Dan Goossen by saying, a quote here, "I was deeply saddened to learn the news of Dan Goossen passing earlier this morning. My thoughts and prayers have been with Dan and his family since I received the news of his illness last week. While Dan and I recently had our professional struggles, he was always a great man, father and husband. He will be greatly missed in the boxing community. I will continue to keep the Goossen family in my prayers." He released that statement Monday.
Yeah, he did, and I give him that for saying that. Especially with them in battles in and out of court. You know, I see. The thing is, I think a lot of it. You noticed in the last couple of years that Ward's been kind of inactive, and I think part of it now it's starting to become clear that Dan Goossen had a lot of health issues, and he couldn't do what he wanted to do. Like he used to when he was at full strength. He had many more cards when he was at full strength. Last couple of years, not so many, and I guess the reason why he wanted to break away from Goossen was because he wanted to further his career, and I get that, but I feel like also too that this was just their battles in court. I mean, especially with Goossen's health issues. I mean, I think it could have been handled a little bit better on Andre's end and by Jay Prince's end, and. I'm not going to diss Ward because I think I understand where he's coming from, but at the same time, Dan had personal and health issues, and I was aware he had health issues. I didn't know the severity of his health issues. I didn't know how bad it was, and when he passed away, that was a shock. Because he had a card coming up in the fall. And it's kind of surprising, it's shocking, So, rest in peace to Dan Goossen. All the fighters he worked with, from James Toney to Paul Williams to Chris Arreola, and countless others over the years. I mean, even going back to his days as before it was called Goossen Tudor, it was called Ten Goose back in the 80s. He worked with named fighters, and he always worked, with that level. And, he did a lot for boxing, and rest in peace to him, and condolences to his family. This is a very difficult time, and, he's going to be missed in boxing. It's going to be kind of sad not to see, those Goossen Tudor, cards. Hopefully, his family continues, but I would understand if they didn't, but because I know that was Dan's baby, his promotion, So rest in peace to him, and it's sad. It's sad, and especially when it happens so suddenly and so shockingly. That's when it kind of hurt. It kind of hurts the most.
Absolutely, and I echo your sentiments here. And rest in peace, rest in power to Dan Goossen. In other news, Canelo Alvarez, news broke. I believe it was either this week or late last week that Canelo Alvarez is moving from Showtime to HBO, signing a 5-fight deal with HBO. De La Hoya made an announcement of it earlier this week, I believe it was. Give some insight to the folks out there who are unaware about the Canelo deal. Give some folks the insight of the details of the deal.
Well, basically, it's just, this typical standard fight deal. You come in for five, for whatever amount of fights, they're supposed to. But I also think it's a calculated move by HBO to counter what's going on with Heyman and Showtime, and Floyd's being their top money maker. Canelo is they're trying to counteract, with pay-per-view sales, and Canelo's a big draw pay-per-view wise. I think the goal is to set up a Canelo Cotto fight in the middle of next year, and I think that's their goal, to make the most money, working with a young talent with Canelo, and to try to build something at HBO. And I think that was a good start. If they're going in this direction, that was a very good start. And I think it's kind of a little bit of a power shift, which is usually what happens in boxing. It shifts back and forth, and this time, Canelo seems to be, and it looks like Golden Boy, the remaining Golden Boys, will be working with HBO. That's what it looks like to me.
And for me, let's hope this leads to an eventual. Look, I think Canelo Alvarez will have issues when he eventually moves up to 160 pounds. Because of the physical limitations, height and reach, otherwise. But right now he is the top 154 pounder in the world. He's one of the most marketable fighters in the world, and I hope moving forward that this move will lead to a eventual showdown with the likes of Cotto or a Triple G.
Yeah, I think that's the goal with signing that deal. They want to make the big fights with Canelo, and they know that doing them on pay-per-view is going to generate a lot of money, a lot of viewership, and it's a very good move. And I think it's going to work out very well for HBO, Canelo, and Golden Boy.
Yeah, so let's move on to kind of a bit of a controversy here about a fight that was supposed to be on. It's now off. I'm talking about the issue with proposed bout between Billy Joe Saunders and Chris Eubank Jr. There was a press conference last week. It was supposed to be a press conference last week to announce the fight between the two. Eubank Jr. didn't show up for the press conference. Saunders and his promoter Frank Warren start being throwing a lot of shade, being real salty towards Eubank Jr. Eubank Jr. released a statement. He said some stuff on Twitter, basically saying that Warren kind of rushed his contract to him, trying to force him to sign it without them reading the fine print, and that's why he dropped out. He basically said he's not going to do nothing. He's not going to sign any contract against any fighter without reading the fine print. And in talking to some guys and listening to some other shows from some guys that I know over in the UK, namely past guest of the show, Errol of EJ Boxing Live, as well as the Boxing Beats and Rhymes. I'm going to shout them out right quick. They talked about this on their show. It seems that Warren was trying to rush this contract into Eubank Jr.'s face without giving him a proper notification of the fight itself. Didn't give him really adequate time to prepare for the bout, and without giving Eubank Jr. and their camp the opportunity to read the fine details. And what made me really skeptical of this is that almost within days of this fight being kind of blown off in our face, you hear word that Billy Joe Saunders is going to fight for a title, is going to have a title shot, as he's going to fight Matt Karabov for the WBO middleweight title, the WBO middleweight title that Peter Quillen recently vacated. That made me open my third eye, and I'm wondering, does this all just come some kind of job on Frank Warren's part to kind of embarrass Eubank, with this Warren being a little bit of a shyster in this sense? Am I wrong to be skeptical about all of this, because something's not right here?
No, there's something definitely not right. Sounds like to me they were trying to get another cheap win before they fought, before they fought a big fight. And, Chris Eubank is senior, dad. He's been in this game a very long time. He knows.
And let me chime in. They have a history, Eubank Sr. and Warren, to go back a long time ago. Eubank Sr., when he came back to England, because for those who don't know, Eubank Sr., he fought his first 5-6 bouts here in the United States, and I believe in New Jersey, I believe.
Yes, he did.
Came back,
and he also won the Spanish Harlem version of the Golden Gloves. He was.
When he came back,
right.
He tried to look for a promoter, and he tried to make a deal with Warren. And the reason that deal didn't go down, was because Eubank was wanting a signing bonus, and Frank Warren didn't give him one. And the reason he signed with Herm is because Herm was willing to give him a signing bonus, and they agreed to all the conditions that Eubank wanted. And over the years during his championship reign, they had their little back and forth from time to time. So there's a history there, and there's a little bit of a beef there. So I can understand why Eubank Sr. principally probably stepped into Eubank Jr. and said, no, you're not going to go through with this. They're trying to put one over on you.
Right. It sounds like what they were trying to do was grab a cheap win before a big fight. That's what they were trying to do. And unfortunately for Warren, the Eubanks, have been in the sport a very long time. They're no mugs. You can't make a fool out of them. You know what I'm saying? And you can't make them look stupid. And I think Dad caught on. I think he was alert, and he put a stop to it. And I think that's the right thing to do because Dad is running his career. I mean, I believe Eubank Jr. would fight Billy Joe Saunders. I don't think this is the right time to do it. I think they would fight. It's just a simple fact of when you do these little shyster moves, that's why these fights get they end up fizzling out because of moves, nonsense like this. And you know what? And then all of a sudden, it's funny. And you notice with a lot of other fighters too. All of a sudden, if a fight pulls out that like the public demands or wants, all of a sudden, bam, fighters in another fight. Well, how did that happen? That came off awful quick. Did you have a lovely negotiation? Was it nice and smooth? Was it like a get together amongst friends? Because I mean, the way that the Karabov Saunders fight came up, that came quick. That was just like bam, 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 and it was done. I mean, it amuses me. Boxing amuses me more than anything.
And keep in mind, initially, Demetrius Andrade, 154-pound champion, WBO version. From what I was hearing, he was set to move up to 160-pound to fight for the vacant title shot. Next thing you know, that was denied. Then all of a sudden, you hear the news break about this bout between Saunders and Karabov, just like that. To me, that says to me, if I didn't know any better, I'm thinking that they knew this all along, that this fight, they had a title shot in their back pocket. So Warren, whoever, threw this up there. Excuse me for being a bit conspiratorial here. So it seems like that Warren, they threw this proposed bout up there, knowing that if any case the fight might not happen with Eubank Jr., they was going to shame him, knowing all along that they had this title shot in the back pocket.
Right. And listen, I've had my questions about Eubank Jr., to his level of opposition, the way he's been, moved so far. But this seems like just a situation where they were trying to make a fool out of somebody, and it kind of backfired in their faces, And at the end of the day, you know what? See, the thing with Andrade is he hasn't had a fight at 160 pounds. So, I mean, I could see why they were apprehensive to put him into the fight. But no matter what, Saunders had to fight in the back pocket. He had the title shot right there. So even if this Eubank Jr. fight didn't happen, he was still going to win. But in reality, I don't think he beats Karabov. So
Yeah, so I want to talk about one more kind of breaking news that broke this today, this afternoon, or this morning, whatever the case. This proposed bout between Stavern and Deontay Wilder. A lot of people want to see it, but they can't seem to make the fight happen as the purse bid was postponed again to today. Second time in less than a month. From your insight, Kent, what is going on here? Wilder is the mandatory challenger for Stavern's title, and yet the fight can't be made for some reason. What's going on here? I do not understand.
from what I'm hearing, it's basically coming down to money, and you know they're trying to agree on the fight, you know, without the purse bid, and there's a lot of things where they get close to making a fight, and then something gets hung up, you know, and I believe a lot of it has to do with Stavern. I don't think, like, not that he's afraid of Wilder, because I don't think he is, but I think there's a lot of apprehension from his camp and Don King about taking a fight where it doesn't really benefit them, you know, really. If they beat, you know, they have everything to lose but little to gain. You see, if Stavern wins, then people will be like, oh well, we beat a you know, a overhyped fraud. But then if he loses the fight, then it'd be like, oh well, he was a bum. So he can't win either way, you know. And I think it's high risk, low reward, and I think that's what the apprehension is. And I kind of don't blame Stavern, because he's in the position where he could fight Klitschko, you know. Even if Wilder is the #1 guy, I mean, who is Wilder? Who has he really beaten? And what's the benefits if you beat him? Not a whole lot. You just beat a guy that was overhyped. So I could see why there's apprehension there to make the fight. I mean, it's high, and if Stavern gets knocked out, then people view him as a bum, and everybody will make Wilder into this unbeatable monster. And I think that a lot of it has to do with the fans and boxing media, and I just think it comes down to it's high risk, little reward.
You mentioned the fear of going to a purse bid. Do you think that either camp are fearing that because they're afraid that just putting it out there, that maybe Roc Nation Sports, Jay-Z's company, once it goes to the purse bid, they may swoop down and buy and outbid everybody for the fight?
That's a possibility. I think they're trying to keep it. I think, see, the thing is, Heyman already kind of lost to Roc Nation already with the whole Quillen Karabov debacle. And there's a chance that Heyman could lose again. What is he gonna have? And if Roc Nation wins the purse bid, what is he gonna do? Have Wilder forfeit the #1 ranking and go into a different direction? Is that what he's gonna do? Just like Quillen forfeited the WBL title? That's what I'm curious about. But it just sounds like a high risk, little reward situation on Stavern's end.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the saga continues in terms of making this fight happen, making this Reign Stavern Deontay Wilder fight happen, and we will see if all parties come to a consensus.
Don't count on it this year, that's for sure.
Yeah, there's no way. There's no way. It's already early October. That fight won't happen until the first quarter of 2015, no doubt about that. Let's move on to start closing the show down, doing a recap. A preview, excuse me, of what's happening in boxing this coming weekend. On Showtime, Ramses Bartholomew versus Fernando Saucedo for Bartholomew's 130-pound belt. Look, is it a great fight on paper? Not really. Bartholomew, he's had his controversial bouts in the past. But, you know, it's the title bout on Showtime. It still deserves some attention. Your thoughts on this bout, Ken?
I think this is designed for Bartholomew to win. I just don't see it going any other way. I mean, Fernando Saucedo has 5 career knockouts.
Yeah, I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to be a downer about it. But
I just want to point. I know you didn't want to go there, but I'm the voice of truth, and I want to give people the real deal with this fight. And I just want to be honest with you. I think this is designed for Bartholomew to win. I think he'll clearly outbox Saucedo. Saucedo was outboxed clearly by Chris John. And I just don't see this fight going any other way. I don't see Saucedo being any sort of threat. I think he's also coming up in weight. I believe he fought John at featherweight, which was 126. This fight is at 130, so he's coming up in weight. This is just typical Al Heyman rigmarole. You know, bring the small guy up in weight, get his name on your record. He'll look good. You know, everybody in that crew cheers, and everybody's happy, and you know they walk away with the belt. And that's just basically what it is. I'm not gonna lie. Listen, that entire card is basically built for Al Heyman fighters to look good. That's all it is. That's all it is. There's no, and I'm not trying to, you know, diss Bartholomew. I think Bartholomew is a good fighter. But there's a reason why he's fighting Saucedo. It's not like he's an overpowering champion. It's not like he's going to be a dominant champion. They got to keep it warm. They got to keep him winning so they can make some money off of him. And then this is just the first step in that. And Saucedo's a pretty safe opponent.
Yeah, absolutely. You said you was one to use a true teller. Wanted to be a true teller about this bout. Well, I want to be a bit of a true teller, or give my truth about this bout we're about to talk about next. Johnny Gonzalez defending his featherweight belt against Jorge Arce in Mexico, also on Saturday night. Listen, on paper for me, I just don't see how Arce can beat this guy, Gonzalez. I know Gonzalez is bipolar as a fighter. He can be up and down. But Arce, he's 30 whatever. He's had over 60 fights, maybe close to 70 by now. He cuts easy, smaller guy, short, small for the weight, short arms. And I just think if Gonzalez, forget his A game, I think if he brings his B plus game, he should have his way with Arce. Arce has surprised us before. Gonzalez has lost fights he should have won. But for me, I just do not see it this time. I think that Gonzalez should win, and should win rather handily.
Yeah, this. I'm going to just put this into perspective. Listen, Johnny Gonzalez is a 126-pound guy, and he's fighting a guy that started his career at 108 pounds. Let that sink in for a minute.
Right.
And listen, Arce is a tough son of a bitch. Okay, he's one of the toughest guys I've seen in the sport. You know, he's a tough dude. He's rugged. He comes to fight. He punches hard. You know, he has a heart of a warrior. But the man has over 70 fights and over 400 rounds in the ring. And he's about, I don't know, 3 or 4 weight classes above his best. And I just don't see this fight going well for Arce. I think Gonzalez wins this by knockout. I'd say probably the middle to late rounds. I think Gonzalez, even if he's not at his best, still knocks him out. Unless he gets caught by a big shot by Arce, and that's possible. But I think Arce at this point is so slow and so, you know, shot worn. You know, man's 35 years old. You know, he's been a pro very nearly 20 years. Okay, and the miles are starting to really pile up on Arce. I'm surprised he's even in this fight. I believe after the Donaire fight,
because it's a big fight in Mexico.
it's a big fight in Mexico, and I'm happy this is a good fight for these guys because it's a fight in Mexico. It's going to be big ratings on Televisa. You already know there's going to be huge ratings for this fight.
Yep.
In Mexico, and it's going to be on beIN Sports Español in the United States. But I'll just say that if you look around, you'll be able to find, a way to watch it without going any further. But this is going to be a huge fight in Mexico. But I just think Johnny Gonzalez is just too big, strong, and he's got less miles on him. Even though they're both past their prime, I think Johnny's a little bit less past his prime than Arce. And I think Johnny will win, and I think that would definitely be it for Arce.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're going to shut the show down on that note. Before I move on and give you an opportunity to let folks know where they can find you and talk about boxing with you, I want to say that starting in the next few weeks, Kit and I talked about this. Instead of doing a regular show and format, whatever, the podcast, we decided we're going to do some special kind of live, on-the-spot discussions, particularly when boxing is slow, hitting a slow period. I think we're going to start that next week. The format is not going to be the long hour and a half, 2-hour format. It's going to be very short, probably maybe 30 minutes at the most, where we talk about certain topics and certain nerdy, in-depth discussions about boxing, and we're going to do that next week. And we're going to, and what we will talk about is the news that broke today. Apparently, Al Heyman is going to have some dealings with NBC. Kathy Duver and her promotional outfit, Main Event, is going to step down. She released a statement about that. It's big news, but it's so vague right now. The story is so vague, so unclear and unsettled. We feel it's a little bit unfair to talk about it now fully, so we have to do some research on it ourselves. And next week we'll do a special kind of short show discussing that alone next week. So moving forward towards the end of the year and definitely into 2015, we'll do a regular show and maybe when things are slow, instead of just trying to extend the show, finding topics and whatever, we will discuss maybe 1 or 2 topics, main topics, and maybe have some kind of like a how can I call it? Special discussions and whatever, roundtable, if you will, and talk about 1 or 2 specific things and make that a show exclusive to YouTube. With that being said, Ken, let the folks know if they want to talk boxing with you, where they can find you and whatnot.
You can reach me at facebook.com/kent.ayers.1. You can reach me there to talk boxing all the time. You know the deal with it. Anybody who's respectful wants to talk to me can. Trolls, you already know what I do about that. I don't need to but yeah, hit me up there if you want to talk boxing. If I get friend requests from a lot of people I don't know that are fans. If you see me on the show or you have watched the show in the past, and if you request me, please let me know and I will add you. No questions. I will add you. If not, I don't add. I just don't add. The only people I add is people in boxing. Like, because I network with different people on my Facebook account. So yeah, just hit me up there. If you see me on the show, please add me. I have a YouTube account that I really don't use. You can hit me up there if you want. It's Kent Ayers on. I don't really use it, but I may start using it and maybe, start doing some things on it, and I haven't decided yet, but that's another place you can reach me, and that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. If y'all want to find out, y'all know what it is as far as I'm concerned. You want to find out more about me, Brother JR, on Twitter. You want to find out more about the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, you can go to two main places. You can go to the blog page, p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. Recently nominated for a 2014 Black Web Blog Award. You can also go to the podcast page, p4pboxingreport.podomatic.com. On the blog page, you can find previous episodes of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report podcast and blogs written by yours truly. And on the podcast page, you can find all previous episodes of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report podcast. On both of those pages as well, you can find all links to find everything Pound for Pound Boxing Report all over social media and all over the internet. Next week, like I said, we would do a premiere, a debut, of a special kind of short show discussing specific topics about the sport. That would be a YouTube-only show. We may do some recaps of this past weekend's action and may do a recap of the upcoming bout between Sam Solomon and Jermaine Taylor, but the main focus will be the breaking news regarding Al Heyman and NBC Sports. I want to thank you, Kent, again for being with me again this week. For my co-host, Kent, I'm your host, Michael. This has been another episode of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. You guys have a good evening. Good night.
Good night.